Hi everybody, my name's Chantel. Today's video we're actually going to go over everything I read this last month and everything that's on my fall TBR list. As you can see, it's a pretty big stack. So we're going to start with the fall TBR list and then we're going to go into the books that I read this month. Okay, so for my fall TBR, we're going to be going over in sections. First off is books that I didn't finish from my summer TBR. Landing on those is my current read, Silver Elite, One Golden Summer, and Atmosphere. These I didn't have enough time to get to them. There is so many books on my summer TBR, and I got through a lot. These three didn't make it in that couple months. So I'm going to be starting off probably reading these just to rip off the Band-Aid, and then we're going to get into more of the fall vibes, the murder mysteries, or the fall romances, stuff like that. Okay, first on our romance list is You Again. This one, I just skimmed the back of the book. I mainly put it on my list because there's a lot of fall leaves in the back. A lot of people have recommended this for a fall romance, and from what I gather, it's kind of a hate to love situation. I will definitely review it when I do read it. Next up, we've got the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I just read, I think, the fourth in this series last month, so I think in July. And I actually loved it, and I jumped in on the fourth, which I never do. But, oh, actually, no, I lied. That's actually in my TBR for August. So I'll be reviewing that later. But I read the fourth one, I loved it, and now I'm going to go read the rest of the series. So this one's on my list. Those are the only two romances I have with me now. Mind you, I still have more books coming, but I gotta start with something. So those are the two romances. These ones, I think they're under romantasy. We've got Heartless Hunter. This one I'm seeing everywhere. It's a book one in a duology, I believe. And Dance of Thieves. This one is categorized as young adult. So I don't know if it's also romantasy or just fantasy, but we'll give it a shot. I already can see there's a map on the first page, so it's definitely fantasy something. And then into our spooky reads. My favorite time to read a spooky read is in the fall months. Now, I have read a couple other books from this author, Riley Sager. We've got Middle of the Night. Never read this one. Gonna give it a shot. We Used to Live Here. This one here, I remember saying scared the crap out of some people last year. I think it was released last year. Let me just check. Yes, it was released in 2024, and I just saw on the inside here, Get Out means parasite. So I think I'm going to love this, and I really want to bump it up my list, but we'll see how that goes. The Haunting. Already just looking at this cover is spooky. This one is when they're approaching Halloween, so definitely a fall read, maybe an October read if you can. This one I want to read in September because it's called The September House, and I just think when else are you going to read it? Anyway, You Can Survive Anything is what it says on the cover, and we're about to find out just what we can survive. Listen for the Lie. Oh, this one I've been seeing a lot on my Goodreads is popping up of like most popular, I think it's a mystery. Yeah, mystery. Most common mystery, most popular mystery. It's popping up everywhere. I need to know what people are talking about, so it's on the list. And the last one that I have with me is First Lie Wins. This one I think is another mystery, thriller vibes. We'll give it a read, and of course I'll let you know what I think. Now, of course I have more fall books coming, but those are the ones that I have with me. And as I get more, they will be entered into my monthly reads, and you can always go to my monthly wrap-ups if you're looking for something kind of in the season for that mood. Now, let's get into the books that I read last month. Okay, our first read I actually just finished today, which is why it's last minute entered in. Once Upon a Broken Heart. This one here, I have been recommended this time and time again because of the author and because I loved Caraval. I read this and I don't know if I had such high expectations for it maybe, but it wasn't my favorite. Everyone preaches how much they love this over Caraval, and it kind of dragged for me. Like, I didn't find it as interesting. I didn't find the main character as likable. Like, I didn't like her as much. And I'd like to see where the series goes. I will be continuing the series. But also, I don't know if I liked Jax as much as I thought I did. And I think I had too high of hopes for this book because everyone preaches how much they love it. For me, it was just a 3-star. It was not something I'm going to be thinking about forever. Like, actually, I expected to devour this in like a day, maybe 2. I think it took me about a week. And considering how short of a book it is, that is a long time for me. So I would just pick it up and I just wasn't feeling it. I'd put it back down, and that's why I'm going to stick it at 3 stars. I really hope this series picks up after that. Evangeline Fox has some really bad luck. She finds herself in the Church of the Prince of Hearts, which is Jax, and she prays to him, asking him to stop the wedding of her boy that she's loved forever, Luke, and Marisol, her stepsister. She's already lost her 2 parents. They both have died. Her father recently, her mother not so recently, so Luke is all she has. He was there during her grieving, and they are hopelessly in love. And she believes he's under a curse, that it could be the only reason that he's marrying her stepsister. So she begs Jax to fix it. In doing so, well, a deal with a fate is never very straightforward. So there's some complications there. And long story short, she catches the attention of the Empress and the princess. So they meet with her and decide to send her up north to represent them at the Duke's ball. The Duke of the North hosts a ball in order to find a fiancé. And since the Empress and the princess can't go due to previous commitments and enemies in the North, they decide to send Evangeline. And who does she see there? Jax. Of course. So it goes on from there. Lots of obstacles, lots of hoops. And you definitely know it's in the same universe as Caraval, but we're following different characters. And I actually thought they'd be a little bit closer connected. So I'm a little disappointed about that. Next book, You Killed Me First. This one here is, I think it's like a mystery vibe. What did they classify it? Mystery thriller is what they classified it as. And okay, I was really excited for this because it says most chilling opening I've ever read right on the front cover. And I'll tell you right now, it wasn't. But the book wasn't too bad. I gave it 4 stars, which is higher than the last one, so I liked it more than that one. But the opening scene was like a woman, you don't know who she is getting burned in a bonfire, and she hears something in her ear, and it's an AirPod, and she answers a call, and she tries to ask for help, and it turns out it's the murderer on the other line. And I didn't think it was the best opening, but it was an opening. I read it, it got better with time. So the premise of this book, we have 3 women. We have Olivia, we have Margot, and we have Anna. The opening scene is a woman, we don't know who, a woman being burned alive in a bonfire. And there's fireworks going, so we know the date, we know the location that it's going to happen based on what they tell us. We just don't know who is in the bonfire. So it goes on to rotate POVs through these 3 women who all live on the same street. Margot and Anna are friends, but different classes. So like Margot is a former, like a pop star, and she's retired, but she still thinks so highly of herself. And let's say Anna's the complete opposite. She's more middle class and more humble for sure. Margot rips apart her self-confidence, like rips apart Anna's self-confidence nonstop. And then we see a new girl enter the street. That's Olivia. And her and Anna get along really well. Her and Margot are butting heads nonstop because Margot thinks she's above everybody, and Olivia's not going to stand for that. So she's constantly making like digs just to stir the pot. Anyway, we learn a little bit more about the lives of these 3 women, and we kind of, as it rotates, you're sitting there thinking, oh yeah, it could be her in the bonfire. And then the next POV goes, oh, it could be her in the bonfire. So it just has you guessing. And slowly you'll uncover a little bit more of everybody's story. And then you also find out who put them in the bonfire. I did like how quick and easy the chapters were, but everything was very abrupt. Like, it was so quick and easy that sometimes the chapter ended and I flipped back and forth to make sure I didn't lose a page. That's how quick and easy it was. I really hated Margot, but I didn't mind the other two women that had the rotating POVs. We had Liv, we had Anna, and we had Margot. And Margot was my least favorite. And then in addition to those 3 POVs that they rotate, they had these italic chapters, like they were all written in italics, and it kind of broke up like timestamps. So like when they jumped forward a week or a month or whatever, they'd put that right before. And you don't really know whose perspective it is, and I don't think you're supposed to, but I did find that really confusing until about halfway through the book. I did not expect the ending. I enjoyed the ending, but I assumed our opening scene with the bonfire would be the end of our story. It's not. It keeps going after that. And I didn't expect that, but I did really enjoy that, because if that was the climax and you opened with that as your first scene, it would have been very disappointing. Next one up is the Strawberry Pancake House. This one is actually the 4th in a series, but you don't need to read them in order because I definitely am not. So it happens in the same world, same universe, I think even the same town. Honestly, I haven't read the others, but Pumpkin Spice Cafe is on my reading list for this fall, so I won't be able to say that for much longer. As you can guess, I loved this book. It was actually a 5-star, which is why I was so quick to put another one on my TBR. So the story behind this book is we're following Archer and Iris. Archer is our male main character. He's coming from France. So he's a chef in France. He's working to be one of the best chefs in the world. And now he's finding himself being pulled to a small town in the US. Why is he going to the US? Because it turns out he has a daughter he never knew about. And the mother of the daughter has recently passed away, which means he now has full custody of his daughter. He has to go to this town, pretty much meet his daughter and learn how to be a parent. And he's still trying to figure out his emotions in regards to having this dropped in his lap and leaving behind his dream. How will he get back to his dream? Then we've got Iris. She's always been kind of like a hopper. That's what I want to call her. Like, she hops from one thing to the other. She just does gig work and like teaching classes down at their community center. And she just goes with the flow. She's never been too serious with things, doesn't do commitment. And it turns out that she needs money. So the owner of the diner pitches. She's got a job for Archer, and when he's working there, she finds out he needs a nanny. She pitches the nanny job to Iris. And then Iris ends up being his live-in nanny to help him learn how to work everything out. Of course, they don't really get along very well at the beginning, but that's part of the slow burn process. I really liked it. It has rotating POVs. However, I do wish they kind of clarified it at the beginning, like whose POV it was, just like a little name on the top. But it is in 3rd person. The book gives off Hallmark vibes. It is really good, but I didn't like the male main character. I thought he was rather selfish, and he kept having to reassure himself that he's doing a good thing, that he's being a good person, and I didn't really like that. I felt like this book was a little bit of a mix of Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls and Book Talk. So putting a little bit of the romantic vibes into it, but the small town reminded me of Stars Hollow, and I really liked that. One thing I am wondering, I haven't read the rest of the series, that won't last for long, but the characters that they bring up in this book, were they mentioned in the other ones? Was our main character in this book mentioned in the other ones? That I'd like to find out. The book is kind of cheesy. It does have a very heavy emphasis on kids because it is the single dad trope, so just keep that in mind. I normally don't reach for the single dad trope, but I wasn't mad at it. I would maybe consider reading more of them. The main reason I gave it 5 stars, besides the atmosphere, was it was a good slow burn, lots of yearning and banter. The next book I read was a major disappointment. I only gave it 2 stars after seeing everyone else give it 5 stars. Sunrise on the Reaping. I would not recommend this book because there's not a lot to it. I wouldn't recommend it unless you are super fascinated with the games themselves. But we've already seen that, which is feeling repetitive. I didn't feel like this book was necessary. There was so many other angles that they could have explored. So what happens in this book? We see Hamish. He's living in District 12, just like Katniss. And he's living the same life as her. Like, he's living a poor life, sneaking out of the grounds. He helps make like liquor and sells it on the black market with the help of one of the other ladies. And he ends up being picked for the reaping. Not originally, but plot twist. It's not much of a plot twist, but I don't want to ruin it because there's not many to begin with. So he ends up getting sent to the capital for the Hunger Games. And it's just loss after loss after loss for this guy. And it showed you how he got to the point he was in when we first saw him in the original trilogy, but I don't think it needed its whole book. It definitely did not need this long of a book. Like, this was almost 400 pages of just getting kicked in the teeth. And I don't think that was necessary, but I know a lot of people loved it. The original trilogy, it refers to Hamish's story. Like, when they describe his character, you already know how his story ends. So the only thing we were missing was details, but I already knew the ending of it, so there wasn't much of a shocker there. At least with the original trilogy, there was a lot more going on to the plot. Like, it was introducing the Hunger Games, the capital, everything like that, but it also had a plot of Katniss trying to save her sister and, you know, trying to get out of the arena, trying to live, right? This was the first time we saw it. It was interesting. They also added in the added love triangle of Gale and Peeta. This one, it didn't have all those different aspects. It was just, this is the games, this is Haymitch. Loss was a huge aspect of the story, but we already knew that because it was mentioned in probably the first 50 pages of the original trilogy. I felt it was recycled and unnecessary, and I don't think it really added anything to the whole series. The last two books I read this month, I actually don't have the physical copies, but I read The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This one here, I have been waiting months for it to come out, and I gave it 4 stars. Honestly, I gave it 4 stars because of the ending, and I could see that coming from a mile away. Otherwise, it would have been a 3-star read, and that was super surprising for me. So the plot to The Night and the Moth is we have our diviners and we have our Knights of the King. The king comes to have his, I don't know if they're called prophecies? Pretty much have his future told by them drowning a diviner in the well, and then they see what she dreams, and we go from there. So his reading was not a positive one. That didn't bother him. He had other plans in the mix. But then shortly after, we see that the diviners start going missing, one by one every night, until we're down to the last one. At that point, she manages to escape with the help of the gargoyle and one of the Knights of the King. And then they are searching down the 5 omens, and it becomes like a hunt because she's trying to find her fellow sisters, the other diviners. There's more details in there, but I'm keeping it vague to prevent spoilers. I feel like one of the weak points of this author is the romance between the characters. It was lacking in this book, and I saw it also lacking in the last series I read. However, the plot in One Dark Window definitely made up for the lack of romantic interactions. I don't know if they're labeled as romantic fantasies, like romantices, or if they're more, like I think these are more supposed to be gothic fantasies, so I can give a pass on that. I feel like it's just so repetitive. It was just hunting omen after omen, and there was 5 of them, and by the 3rd one, I was bored. I understand you needed the closure of doing all 5, but it just got repetitive. I also didn't like the gargoyle. Like, I know he gave comic relief for some of the scenes, but I just felt he was out of place. I also found that her writing style was different in this book. It was more, I don't know if it's the right term, but it felt more like past tense. She would write things like, and then this happened. And I don't really like that style of writing. I find it harder to visualize and live it firsthand when it's written like that. And the last book that I read this month was The Devils. This one here was 2 stars. I would have DNF'd it if I hadn't been so far into it. By the time I was ready to DNF it, I think it was like 200 pages in. And that felt like too big of a commitment to not know how it ended. Now our plot, we have Alex. She is a descendant of the Empress of Troy. She currently lives in the streets of the Holy City because she was sent away as a child. I believe it was for her protection. So her uncle comes to find her to bring her back because she is now next in line for the throne. To ensure she has safe passage from the Holy City to the city of Troy, she has a vampire, a sorcerer, a werewolf, a priest, an elf who goes invisible, a retired pirate, and a knight who never dies. That is her crew. That is our rotating main characters that we see their POVs. So they take her to go to Troy, but they hit a lot of obstacles because the rest of her family, her cousins, are not excited about this situation. So we see one family member after the other getting in her way on her journey to Troy. It was giving me everything I wanted because it was giving magical elements but like serious, and the books I've been reading recently make the magic seem childish, but I just didn't like it. The banter was, there was too many main characters. I don't really know who the main character was. We had a knight who never dies, we had a priest, we had a werewolf, we had a sorcerer, we also had a princess from the streets. I think she's a retired pirate was another one. I think I'm missing someone. Either way, there was quite a few in their gang, and when they started bickering amongst each other, it became too much. It was chaotic. The pacing is slower than I'd like, and the narration was very blunt, which I'm sure is like a stylistic choice, but it wasn't my preference. It was in third person, and they had a lot of rotating POVs, and sometimes they'd be starting a different POV, and I had no idea whose POV it was, and I had too many options. Could have been one of like 8 different main characters. I also didn't like the descriptions. Sometimes he'd reuse the same word in like one sentence and then the following sentence, and it just felt kind of like a laundry list, and I didn't like that. They also kept referring to like past quests, but like didn't explain what happened on them, and so it felt like there was a lot of inside jokes on the character's side, but as the reader, I wasn't following, and I felt left out. By the arrival of the second cousin, I was already feeling a rinse and repeat plot, and that was, I think, around page 200, and this was almost 600 pages. This book had everything I'd been asking for, and I hated it. If you broke it down by plot, I should have loved it. I just really didn't like the execution. And that wraps up my monthly reads for August. I'm super excited about the books on my fall TBR because this past month I have had quite a few disappointments. Books that had high hopes that did not reach expectations. Thanks for watching, everybody. You can leave a comment down below. You can like and subscribe. And next monthly wrap-up will be featuring some of those books from earlier in the video. Bye!